So what I'm looking at with this map is what looks like a very watery spot. But I want to say that for our purposes, that this water is unusable even by dusters. That this liquid is so alkaline and possibly has other compounds and things in it that it is effectively a poison pool.
Look.
Right. And so that this would be placed within traveling distance from the river tribe that we talked about, that Vefselk is part of. So therefore, traveling to this region is not unheard of for you. But on the other hand, it is kind of a grim, haunted region and isn't really where people go. It is associated with the exterminated human tribes from several centuries ago.
Mm-hmm.
So this is considered sort of, cursed territory to some extent. Right. And who knows? Maybe a while ago this was a great oasis or something, but it hasn't been for a long time. You will note the skeleton of some sort of reptilian creature, and that is there. There's also, let's see here. There's also, given the vertical view, the assumption that around the frame of this visible map, you have an elevated position, right, looking down into it. So somehow you would come to this area and it's almost like a depression or a set of lower levels that you're looking down into. The other way of looking at it is that you're approaching from one of the edges inside those lower levels. So you're actually looking up at the birds, so at the viewer of the map, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I'm going to suggest that Farith and Vefselk are traveling together to have come to this place, whereas Ithasha, on the other hand, has come here on perhaps related reasons, but not as an ally, not in knowledge of the other two. So that's my notion, is to start in this place and say we've all shown up here, two of you together and one of you not. And we will talk a little bit about what we're doing and what's happening, and then switch to flashback mode, because I have ideas for the backstory for each of you. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how you want your characters to relate to those backstories, and that's why we will be able to roleplay meaningfully in those flashbacks. Right? We don't have to make it painful, right? You can be in there and do what you want, and interact with the characters that you want. We'll all just assume that you end up here because of it.
Okay.
Right. So this technique is actually available to all role-playing at all time, but people hardly ever do it. Let's take a look at where I'm actually going to say that I'm okay with you determining your physical positions relative to these situations, to the things you see. So if you want to be approaching, at the level of the water and the skeleton and stuff like that, that's fine. If you want to be perched, up around the upper levels, looking down, that's fine. So at this point, that's kind of where I'd like you to say, if you might be asking yourself, okay, so why are we here? What are we doing here? Well, the tribal areas that this is most associated with are Vefselk's tribe, which has fairly constant interaction with the humans, the human settlements. Um, and so that means Athasha has probably had to travel a certain amount, through known routes, routes of trade, routes of contact, personal contact. It's not amazing that your character could be here, but you actually had to do it. You actually had to go and travel to get here. And that Farith, I assume, has sort of gone on a personal journey, found the Duster tribe that he has the most genetic contact, genetic history with.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and that's why you are with Vetselk to come to this
Good.
place.
Okay.
Right.
I think specifically to the situation, it's immediately clear to me that I'm going to be drawn to the bones.
Okay.
Because I'm picturing myself, however the scene begins, I picked up my book and
Right.
I'm sketching stuff and I'm picking up notes because that's my,
Got it. Okay.
immediate interest.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense, particularly since that immediately gives us a monster knowledge skill.
Oh, yeah, right. And this one, I think you have to roll it. It's, let me check.
Yeah.
No, I roll it. Yeah, I have to. Basically, what happens if I got the skill right is that I have to have something to study on. If the bones are enough, I guess
The
that's
book
up to
is
you.
actually really, really helpful with what monster knowledge rolls can tell you.
Okay.
So there's a nice, it's the same thing with 4E and I think 3E for D&D. It tells you what the different levels of success are like for a given creature. So it's
Okay.
similar. Um,
Okay, then I'm going to.
okay, but before you roll, since Vefselk is accompanying you, let's get a better view. Are you actually talking about being right up there with the bones?
If nothing happens, I think that will be. I mean, that will beat my caution, and
Sure.
I will just
Mm-hmm. And so,
get down there.
and then, the next question is Vefselk. Where would you be, Sam? Where would you have her be placed relative to this eager driver from the towns who you've shepherded probably through the cursed lands?
Right.
Happily jumping up and going, "Ooh,
Yeah.
bones!" And sketching.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't picture Vefselk as super like. I think she sees the bones as a material, and she's gonna go look at the teeth if there are teeth to. I mean, she needs a new bow and arrows. I couldn't afford it, so I think she's over by like the maw of the
Okay,
thing,
so you guys
looking
are
in the teeth.
picking over the beast. Excellent.
Yeah.
So that's
Sorry,
great.
I just had this idea. Sam trying to get over some teeth to have arrow tips, and
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit
and
more.
Lorenzo
Right?
trying to get him away from that so he can draw the
Yeah,
undisturbed
so leave
bone.
those alone. Leave those alone. Right.
Yeah.
How
So
much of a hubbub are you guys making? Because
that's an
I'm just
important
trying
point.
to figure out if I can hear you from afar.
Well, we'll
Well, I
talk about
think
that in a moment because we don't quite know where your character is positioned. But I do want to point out that drivers don't shapeshift. So I presume, anyway, that Vefselk is in human form. And
Yeah.
so Vefselk is probably dressed in tribal attire. So it's probably, leather and fairly minimal clothing. But, even this is the kind of thing, you've got your American Indian thing going on, and you've also got your kind of Arabian thing going on. So to sort of the notion that Farith would definitely, I think, be wearing a headpiece, a hood
Yeah.
with very loose clothes, and if not a full robe, at least enough of that so that the air can circulate out and the sun is just not beating down on you.
Yeah.
Right. So your eyes are shaded, stuff like that. So I'm imagining you wearing that kind of attire.
Yeah, it makes.
Right.
I bought a robe and the
Right.
pants. I mean, I have pants, but
Right.
I wear a robe.
Got it. And as
And
far as
one thing,
right, go ahead.
no, one thing is that my impression from the text is that the drivers are assumed to be dark-skinned. I mean, the text speaks of, so I'm imagining my guy as, fairly dark-skinned,
Okay.
like more Nubian or Kushite than Egyptian,
Perfect. Okay.
so to
Excellent.
say.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
with that in mind, we'll also take a look at his Draver features, which is the one big Draver feature is that inhuman upper nose, right? So from
Yeah.
the nose across under the eyes, there's a look, a solidity to that section that is not found in humans in any group.
Yeah.
So that's definitely there. And just for fun, do you have an eye color for your character on your sheet? I don't remember.
Dark green. It gave me dark green, I
Got it.
think.
Okay. That's really cool. Actually, you got these green eyes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so with that in mind, also your character carries weapons, correct?
I have one short sword. Yes.
Okay. So, right. So you got the short sword there as a utility item, and that's
And a
that's
knife.
right.
I mean,
right.
yeah.
So the two of you clearly are carrying supplies, and that's no surprise, particularly although for the duster, supplies aren't the same as for a human, right? I mean, they don't need sleeping gear. They just go snake and wiggle into, or even don't even go snake and just wiggle into the ground. So just to catch up a little bit, has Farith ever burrowed living in town?
Ever? Sorry?
Burrowed, gone, like literally just started digging and just like suddenly discover that you could actually be under.
Yeah, I think it's as part of my.
With no like crawl space. You don't actually dig a tunnel. You just actually
No.
go and burrow through the ground.
No, it's when you around the beach and you go dip yourself into the sand, like.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's part of his coming of age was experimenting with that.
Right.
I don't know if you feel some sort of call for that kind of behavior, if you have some genetic memory of that, but I would imagine him doing that kind of stuff.
Well, here it's part of traveling across the wastes. Why bother climbing across those difficult rocks if there's enough loose ground in the area where you just go into the ground and come up on the other side? Right.
Yeah.
That's something that dusters do, I think, fairly just as a habit, just the way they travel. And so Farith has probably done more of that. You're not as good at it as a duster, but you can do it, and a human can't do it at all. Right. So that's kind of an interesting, difference for you. Is just that now instead of a ritualistic act or something like that, for you, this is just the part of getting across this terrain. And you're dealing with a fully, a full duster who doesn't live in town, who speaks perfectly good common, and who is, but still, is clearly a hunter and lives out there and doesn't deal with humans or dravers particularly.
Yeah.
So,